She fought her billionaire CEO ex for custody and lost. But what their son said after court broke the internet. The gavel strikes wood 3 times, each impact reverberating through the courtroom like thunder breaking over still water. Camera shutters fire in rapid succession, their mechanical chorus drowning out the bailiff's call for order. Ilara Cross stands frozen at the plaintiff's table, her knuckles bone white against the leather handles of a worn canvas tote, the same one she's carried since art school, still bearing a streak of cadmium yellow from her thesis project 12 years ago. The bag holds divorce papers, custody evaluations, and a folded drawing. Her son made last Tuesday, 2 houses connected by a rainbow bridge. Across the center aisle, Lucian Graves maintains the stillness of a man who learned long ago that movement betrays emotion. His architect's hands rest flat against the mahogany table, measuring invisible distances between what was and what will be. The courtroom smells of old wood and fresh newsprint, of coffee gone cold and hearts worn thin. Between these 2 people who once shared everything, morning coffee, midnight fears, dreams of forever, stands their 10-year-old son, Orion, walking toward a forest of microphones with the measured steps of someone carrying something fragile. The reporters lean forward, hungry for tears or triumph, for the money shot that will make tomorrow's front page. They want winners and losers, heroes and villains, the clean narrative that sells papers and drives clicks. What they're about to get instead is a child who refuses to be anyone's victory. Orion stops at the podium, which comes up to his chest. Someone has placed a step stool there, anticipating this moment, but he doesn't use it. He simply looks up at the crowd of adults who have spent 6 months dissecting his life, evaluating his attachments, measuring his love, like it's something that can be weighed on scales of justice. Ever watch 2 people who built a life together get transformed into legal adversaries? Ever seen love letters become evidence, family photos turned into exhibits A through Z? The transformation happens slowly at first. Missed dinners become patterns of neglect, different parenting styles become fundamental incompatibilities, and suddenly the person you once trusted with your whole heart is sitting across a conference table while lawyers argue about who deserves more time with the human being you created together. If you believe children aren't prizes to be won or possessions to be divided, hit that like button right now and subscribe to Mr. Steele Rich Stories, because these aren't just stories. They're mirrors held up to our own complicated hearts. Drop both homes in the comments if you've ever been the bridge between 2 worlds. If you've ever had 2 bedrooms, 2 sets of rules, 2 versions of yourself. Maybe you're the parent fighting for every precious hour, or the child with a backpack that never fully unpacks, or the step-parent trying to love without overstepping. Whatever brought you here, stay until the end, because what Orion says in the next 30 seconds doesn't just go viral across every platform from TikTok to the evening news. It doesn't just get shared 12 million times in 48 hours or spawn 1,000 think pieces about modern families. What he says fundamentally changes how his parents see their war, their roles, and the price of winning. It rewrites the ending they thought they were fighting toward. His words, unscripted and unrehearsed, become the foundation for something nobody in that courtroom expects. Not the judge who's presided over 1,000 custody battles, not the court reporter whose fingers have captured decades of family destruction, not the guardian ad litem who submitted a 40-page report recommending primary custody, and certainly not Ilara and Lucian, who have spent $200,000 and 18 months preparing for this moment of supposed resolution. Please stop asking who won, Orion says, his voice carrying the particular clarity of children who have been forced to grow up between 2 homes, 2 hearts, 2 versions of truth. No prepared statement clutched in sweaty palms, no coaching from either parent. Its legal team, no carefully crafted narrative designed to sway public opinion, just a boy speaking directly to the adults who seem to have forgotten that custody battles aren't fought over objects, but over human beings with their own feelings, needs, and voices. I'm not a trophy you display on a shelf. I'm not a prize that proves who was the better parent, or who loved more, or who deserved to win. I'm a person, your person, both of yours, and I need both my homes. The courtroom falls silent, the kind of quiet that happens when truth cuts through noise like a blade through fabric. Cameras stop clicking. Reporters stop scribbling. Even the HVAC system seems to pause, as if the building itself needs a moment to absorb what just happened. Freeze that moment, the one where a child's honesty shatters the entire framework of winners and losers that everyone brought into this room, to understand why that single sentence broke the internet, crashed 3 news websites, and ultimately rebuilt a family that everyone thought was irreparably broken. We need to rewind. We need to go back to the night the city made its strongest case for everyday magic. The night of the Aurora Festival, when Ilara Cross and Lucian Graves first collided in a crowd of 10,000 strangers, neither knowing they'd just met the person. They'd spend the next decade loving, losing, and learning to love differently. The courthouse steps stretch down like stone teeth, each one crowded with bodies angling for the perfect shot. Channel 7's van blocks the fire hydrant while their reporter practices her opening, mouthing words that will soon race across ticker tapes and trending feeds. Inside the lobby, security guards form a human corridor, their faces neutral as Switzerland while holding back the surge of public interest that transformed a private family matter into public theatre. The elevator climbs to the 4th floor, Family Court Division, and when its doors part, the hallway explodes with light and sound. Orion Graves' cross emerges between his parents, though they're careful not to touch him or each other, maintaining the precise distance their lawyers recommended. The boy wears his school uniform because his grandmother insisted normal routines matter more than matching the moment's gravity. Navy blazer, pressed khakis, the striped tie that usually hangs loose by second period, but today stays perfectly knotted. His sneakers, the ones with the worn left heel from his skateboard break, squeak against the polished floor with each step toward the courtroom doors. Judge Helen Winters has presided over custody cases for 23 years, has seen love turn to litigation more times than she can count, but something about this morning feels different. Maybe it's the media attention that forced them to bring in extra bailiffs, or maybe it's the way both parents keep glancing at their son instead of their phones. The courtroom fills beyond capacity, standing room only, journalists squeezed shoulder to shoulder against the back wall. The court clerk calls the case number, FD 2024-0892, and suddenly everyone remembers this isn't entertainment, but someone's actual life being decided. Ilara's lawyer, Margaret Torres, arranges documents with the efficiency of someone who bills in 6-minute increments. Across the aisle, Lucian's attorney, David Reeves, whispers last minute, reminders about maintaining composure regardless of outcome. Between the legal teams, guardian ad litem Patricia Santos sits with a folder, thick enough to hold a novel, her investigation into what serves Orion's best interests, interviews with teachers, therapists, coaches even, the elderly neighbor who watches him water her plants every Thursday. The judge's decision takes 14 minutes to read. She discusses stability, attachment, educational continuity, emotional bonds, financial resources, living arrangements, work schedules, support systems. Legal language that transforms human relationships into checkboxes and criteria. Primary physical custody, reasonable visitation, holiday schedules that split Christmas morning from Christmas Eve, birthdays, into hourly segments, summer vacations into week-long rotations, words that will govern where Orion sleeps, eats, does homework, gets sick, celebrates, mourns, grows up. Ilara's hand finds the edge of the table when she hears primary custody, awarded to, and Lucian's jaw muscle tightens like a wire pulled taut. But then Judge Winters does something unexpected. She addresses Orion directly, acknowledging that while the law requires adult decisions, the heart of this case beats in a 10-year-old chest. "Young man," she says, her voice gentler than anyone expected, "the court has made its legal determination, but I want you to know this isn't about choosing favorites. Both your parents love you beyond measure." The gavel falls. The official part ends. The chaos begins. Reporters surge forward like a tide, microphones extended like fishing rods, hoping to hook the perfect quote. Ilara's publicist, hired reluctantly when the case went viral, tries to coordinate an orderly exit, but the crowd's momentum has its own physics. Someone shouts about exclusive interviews. Someone else waves a book deal contract. A podcaster promises to tell the real story if they'll just give her 5 minutes. Through it all, Orion walks with the strange calm of someone who's already decided what happens next. He doesn't look at his parents, doesn't acknowledge the shouted questions about feelings and fairness. He simply approaches the bank of microphones that news crews have arranged on the courthouse steps, each one labeled with network letters and cable channel logos. The crowd quiets the way theaters do when lights dim. Even traffic seems to pause, as if the city itself leans in to listen. "Please stop asking who won," Orion says, and his voice carries, despite its softness, picked up by 17 different microphones and broadcast to 17 different audiences who will replay this moment. Until it becomes more than words, until it becomes a movement. I'm not a prize, I'm a person, and I need both my homes. The silence that follows lasts exactly 3 seconds before the questions explode like fireworks. But Orion has already turned away, walking back to his parents who stand frozen like figures in a photograph, processing what their son just taught them about victory and defeat. Within minutes, the clip appears on social media. Within an hour, it's been shared 10,000 times. Within 6 hours, it's trending globally with hashtags like hashtag both homes and hashtag not a prize and hashtag listen to the kids. News anchors interrupt regular programming. Child psychologists book emergency segments. Parenting blogs crash. From traffic surges, the comment sections become battlegrounds between people projecting their own custody traumas and those demanding better from family court systems. Celebrities retweet with prayer hand emojis. Politicians promise reform. Parents fighting their own custody battles print Orion's words on t-shirts, on signs, on petitions for judicial review. Screen after screen lights up with the same image, a boy in a school uniform speaking. Truth to power, to pain, to the complicated reality of modern families. The video plays on Times Square billboards, on phones in Tokyo subways, on tablets in London cafes. News outlets create graphics showing the viral spread like a disease map, each sharing a red dot spreading across continents. But somewhere between the millionth and 2 millionth view, something shifts. The story stops being about the viral moment and starts being about what happens next. Because Ilara and Lucien, standing on those courthouse steps, watching their son become a symbol, make a decision that surprises everyone, especially their lawyers. They decide to talk. Not through attorneys or mediators or court-appointed professionals, but directly, honestly, for the first time since the divorce proceedings began. The screen fades to black. White text appears 48 hours earlier. The next image shows not a courtroom, but a kitchen table covered in homework. Hot chocolate going cold, and Orion writing something in careful cursive. We're about to learn what led to this moment. What forces converged to put a 10-year-old at those microphones, and why his parents' love story matters as much as its ending. The mysteries stack like blocks. Why did the marriage end when anyone could see they still cared? What evidence did Judge Winters weigh that the cameras couldn't capture? And most importantly, what changes after those cameras stop rolling, after the viral moment passes, after 2 parents remember? That love isn't just something you fall into or out of. It's something you choose, reshape, and sometimes redefine entirely. But first, before we unpack the present, we need to understand the past. 8 winters earlier, in a hardware store that smells of sawdust and possibility, a ladder wobbles dangerously. Ilara Cross, stretching for a can of cerulean blue paint, feels the aluminum frame shift beneath her feet. Her hands grasp for stability that isn't there. The fall seems certain, inevitable, the kind of moment that ends in emergency rooms and insurance claims. But then a stranger's hand steadies the ladder's base, and instead of falling, she finds herself looking down into eyes the color of architect's ink. Lucian Graves could have simply stopped the ladder and walked away. The city trains you to help but not engage, to be kind but not connected. Instead, his hand decides to stay. And with that simple choice, everything that follows, the love, the loss, the boy who will one day stand at microphones and redefine family, becomes possible. The cafe where they decide to separate sits 3 blocks from the apartment they still share. Neutral. Territory chosen because their kitchen table holds too many memories to host this conversation. Rain traces patterns down the window, while Elara stirs sugar into tea she won't drink, and Lucian folds a napkin into smaller and smaller squares. They've been married 9 years, together for 12, and the decision to end it comes without shouting or accusations, just the quiet acknowledgement that love isn't always enough to bridge fundamental differences. We keep hurting each other, Elara says softly, watching steam rise from her untouched cup. Not because we're cruel, but because we're incompatible. You need plans and I need freedom, and, somewhere in the middle, we both keep losing ourselves. Lucian nods, the napkin now origami small in his architect's hands. Orion deserves better than watching us negotiate every decision, like enemy nations drafting treaties. They sit with that truth, letting it settle like sediment. The separation agreement takes shape over 2 hours and 3 refills. 2 apartments, within the same school district, shared custody split down. The middle, one unbreakable promise that their son comes first, always, before pride or pain or the temptation to turn divorce into war. They shake hands across the table like business partners, then hold on a moment too long, mourning what they couldn't fix. The first year of separation becomes their greatest collaboration. Lucian finds an apartment 4 blocks east, close enough that Orion can walk. Between homes when he's older, far enough that they each get space to breathe. Elara keeps the original place with its painted walls and organized chaos. They create schedules that actually work. Thursdays are chess nights at Lucian's, where father and son study openings and endgames while eating takeout from the Thai place that knows their order. Piano lessons happen at Elara's because the upright fits better in her living room, and she doesn't mind the imperfect practice sessions that Lucian finds physically painful to endure. Pickups happen on doorsteps with actual conversation, not the terse handoffs. They've witnessed other divorced parents perform like hostage exchanges. They attend parent-teacher conferences together, sitting side by side, presenting a united front that confuses the guidance counselor who's used to taking separate appointments. Halloween sees Orion trick-or-treating with both parents, his costume a collaboration. Elara's creative design, Lucian's structural engineering ensuring the cardboard spaceship doesn't collapse before candy collection ends. Holidays get divided not with lawyer precision but with family logic, treating their split. Households like cousins sharing celebrations rather than opponents dividing territory. Thanksgiving at Lucian's parents' house upstate, Christmas morning at Elara, sisters Brooklyn Brownstone, New Year's Eve alternating annually. Orion's birthday parties happen in parks where both families attend, where his maternal grandmother brings her famous tres leches cake, while Lucian's father organizes relay races with the efficiency of a former Marine. Their friends marvel at how civilized it all seems, how mature, how admirably they've prioritized their child over their egos. Magazine articles get written about conscious uncoupling and modern co-parenting. A mommy blogger asks to interview them for a series on divorce done right. They politely decline, superstitious that naming their success might jinx it, unaware. That success is already developing cracks too small to see, but deep enough to matter. The turn comes in March, during the week when winter can't decide if it's finished. Elara's mother calls from the upstate farmhouse where she's lived for 40 years, the one with the red barn and the apple orchard, and the rope swing Elara used as a child. She's fallen, broken her hip, and needs help during recovery. The surgery goes well, but rehabilitation will take months, and her mother lives alone, 30 minutes from the nearest hospital, an hour from anything resembling reliable help. Elara proposes a 3-month plan: move upstate temporarily, bring Orion, enroll him in the local school for the spring semester, help her mother heal while giving their son country experiences he'll never get in the city. She presents it to Lucian over coffee, expecting complications but hoping for understanding. It's just 3 months, she explains, showing him the doctor's timeline, the rehabilitation schedule, and her mother's grateful texts. Orion could see snow that isn't grey with exhaust, help feed chickens, learn where his grandmother grew up. And I could actually be there for my mom instead of making 5-hour round trips twice a week. Lucian's response isn't immediate anger but careful analysis, the architect, in him calculating load-bearing walls and structural integrity. 3 months is a quarter of his school year, he says, pulling up the custody agreement on his phone. Madison Elementary has continuity, friends, chess club, the spring musical he's already rehearsing for. What about his routine, his stability? He offers city solutions with the same precision he brings to every problem: hire a home health aide for her mother, split the driving duties, and bring her mother to the city for recovery. Each suggestion is practical, thoughtful, expensive, and completely missing the point. Ilara feels something shift in her chest, a familiar tightness from their marriage. This isn't about logistics, she says, voice strained. This is about family, about being present, about teaching Orion that when people we love need us, we show up. Lucian counters that showing up doesn't require uprooting a child, disrupting his education, removing him from his established life. The conversation circles, each iteration leaving deeper grooves. "You're erasing me again," Ilara finally says, the words sharp as broken glass. "Covering my choices with your better plans, your superior logic, your data-backed evidence that your way is the right way." He looks genuinely hurt. "I'm protecting our son's stability. That's not erasure, that's responsibility." The no for now becomes the match that lights everything. Ilara takes Orion upstate for weekends, longer stretches during school breaks, teaching him to collect eggs and identify constellations far from light pollution. Lucian objects to each extension, citing the custody agreement, documenting every deviation from their established schedule. Doorstep conversations become tenser, clipped, each exchange feeling more like negotiation than collaboration. He starts keeping records, dates, times, who said what, every instance where the plan changed without mutual consent. She accuses him of treating their son like a timeshare, their family like a contract dispute. The paper cuts accumulate. A pickup delayed by traffic becomes evidence of unreliability. A forgotten soccer cleat left at the wrong apartment transforms into proof of disorganization. A spontaneous museum trip during his time gets labeled parental alienation. Their friends stop marveling at their mature parenting and start taking sides. The mommy blogger who wanted to interview them writes a different article. When good divorces go bad. The morning Ilara receives legal papers delivered by a process server to her mother's farmhouse. She's in the garden helping Orion plant tomatoes. The envelope is thick, official, and devastating. Lucian is filing for modification of custody, citing changed circumstances, requesting primary physical custody with her getting reasonable visitation. The legal language transforms their history into exhibits, their love into evidence against them. Exhibit A, documentation of schedule deviations. Exhibit B, school attendance records showing absences. Exhibit C, text messages where tone can be weaponized. Where can we be flexible? Becomes proof of instability. She calls him immediately, hands shaking. "You sued me? After everything? You're actually taking me to court?" His voice sounds tired, defensive. "You left me no choice. You kept pushing boundaries, treating our agreement like a suggestion. I asked you to work with me, and you chose your way over our son's welfare. I chose my mother over your calendar." She shoots back. "And you chose control over trust." The call ends badly, both of them angrier than they've been through the entire separation, both convinced they're the reasonable one, both scared of losing the person they love most. The question posts across social media platforms, sparking debates in comment sections and group chats. Should Ilara have gone upstate anyway, despite Lucian's objections? Yes or no? And why does your answer matter? The responses split almost exactly down the middle. Team Ilara argues that family emergencies trump custody schedules, that flexibility is necessary, that Lucian's rigidity proves exactly why she needed distance. Team Lucian counters that agreements exist for a reason, that stability protects children, that Ilara's unilateral decisions show disrespect for his equal parenting rights. But the most interesting responses come from the people who refuse to choose sides, who recognize that both parents are right and wrong simultaneously, who understand that family court will try to pick a winner in a situation where everyone has already lost something precious. Weeks later, in a courtroom that measures love in calendars and capability in kitchen square footage, Judge Helen Winters will try to weigh the unmeasurable. What does home even mean when a child has two? How do you calculate the value of grandmother's apple orchard against the consistency of urban routine? Can you quantify the difference between a parent who plans perfectly and one who adapts beautifully? The evidence will pile up: school records and therapist evaluations, character witnesses, and financial statements, everything except the thing that matters most, that Orion loves both his parents completely differently and wants permission to keep doing exactly that, without choosing, without measuring, without turning his heart into a courtroom. The thick pieces start appearing within days of the custody filing becoming public record, each headline sharper than the last. Money versus Motherhood, the Graves Cross case, and what it says about modern parenting trends on 3 platforms before breakfast. A legal correspondent for a major network breaks down the case during prime time, displaying photos of Lucian's architect firm and Ilara's art studio as evidence in a crime scene. The Atlantic runs a 4,000-word essay titled "Who Deserves Stability?", complete with expert commentary from child psychologists who've never met Orion but have strong opinions about his welfare. Parenting forums explode with debate, some praising Lucian's commitment to structure and educational continuity, others championing Ilara's family-first values and creative parenting. Neither parent asked to become a symbol, but the internet doesn't require consent. Suddenly, Lucian represents every father fighting for equal custody rights. Every parent who believes consistency protects children from chaos. Ilara becomes the face of maternal sacrifice, of choosing elderly parents over convenient arrangements, of refusing to let lawyers dictate family love. The nuance dies in the comment sections where complexity gets traded for clickable certainty. Twitter accounts emerge dedicated to tracking the case. Court watchers post daily updates from the gallery describing what each parent wore: Ilara in flowing scarves and artist's boots, Lucian in tailored suits with precisely knotted ties. How they entered: separately, avoiding eye contact. Where they sat: maximum possible distance within the plaintiff and defendant tables. A TikTok legal analyst breaks down custody law for her 800,000 followers, using the Graves Cross case as her primary example. She posts videos explaining primary custody versus joint custody, how courts weigh stability factors, what best interests of the child actually means in legal language versus human reality. Her comment sections become battlegrounds. "He just wants control," someone types, receiving 12,000 likes. "She wants freedom without consequences," another counters with equal engagement. Neither commenter knows these people, has never witnessed their actual parenting, has no stake in the outcome beyond the vicarious thrill of judging strangers from a safe distance. Meanwhile, Orion sits in his 4th grade classroom learning long division, unaware that thousands of people are debating his welfare over breakfast, coffee, and lunch breaks. The courtroom inventory begins on day 2 of the hearing, a parade of measurements that try to quantify love through square footage and safety features. Margaret Torres, Ilara's attorney, presents financial documents showing her client's modest income, from freelance illustration and part-time teaching, emphasizing that money doesn't equal devotion. David Reeves, representing Lucian, counters with bank statements proving his client's ability to provide consistent housing, healthcare, educational opportunities without financial stress. The court examines bedtime routines, Ilara's flexible approach where sleep happens when tiredness arrives versus Lucian's research-backed schedule optimized for childhood development. They discuss stair rails. Lucian's apartment meets every safety code, including childproofing on outlets, cabinet locks on cleaning supplies, Window guards tested to hold 150 pounds. Ilara's place has original 1,920 seconds railings, vintage charm, character. That doesn't always comply with modern safety regulations, but has housed 3 generations without incident. School proximity becomes evidence. Lucian lives 0.7 miles from Madison Elementary, walkable in 12 minutes. Ilara's apartment sits 1.3 miles away, requiring a bus ride or car trip, adding variables to the morning routine. Guardian ad litem Patricia Santos takes the stand on day 3, her testimony carrying weight because she represents Orion's interests independent of either parent's agenda. She's a woman in her 50s who spent 20 years interviewing children caught between loving parents, trying to translate heart language into legal recommendations. "I've observed Mr. Graves cross in both homes," she begins, reading from notes thick as a novella. "At his father's residence, he has his own room painted a color he chose. Navy, blue with glow-in-the-dark stars arranged in actual constellation patterns. His homework station is organized. Supplies labeled A, schedule posted that includes study time, recreation, chores appropriate for his age. He describes feeling safe there, knowing what comes next, appreciating that his father doesn't forget anything." She flips pages. At his mother's apartment, he shares creative space with her studio. His room is smaller, but he calls it cozy, decorated with paintings they've made together. The schedule is looser. Homework happens when it happens. Dinner might be breakfast food. Bedtime involves stories that sometimes run until midnight. He describes feeling free there, like I can be myself, appreciating that his mother understands my ideas. The courtroom listens, carefully, trying to hear preference in the description, trying to find the winner Patricia hasn't named. Judge Winters watches both parents throughout the testimony, her kind eyes missing nothing. She presided over enough custody cases to recognize truth beneath performance, to distinguish genuine concern from strategic positioning. She sees how Lucian's jaw tightens when testimony suggests his structure might feel restrictive, how Ilara's hands twist in her lap when financial stability gets questioned. She notices, too, how both parents lean forward whenever Orion's actual words get quoted, how their faces soften identically when Patricia describes their son's love for each of them. The theatrics continue. Lawyers object, redirect, impeach witnesses with prior statements, create drama for the court reporter to capture. But human truth keeps leaking through the professional presentation like water through stones. During a recess, the judge watches through her chamber window as Ilara and Lucian stand on opposite sides of the courthouse steps, each on their phone, probably calling the same person, Orion, to ask about his day. They use different words, different tones, but identical concerns. That observation matters more than any exhibit. The viral nature of the case adds pressure neither parent anticipated. Ilara's phone fills with messages from strangers, some supportive, others vicious. "You're being punished for not being rich enough," one DM reads. "Gold digger using your kid for sympathy," says another. She stops reading them, but the notifications keep coming like accusations. Lucian faces different attacks. Control freak who can't stand that his ex has a life, trends under his architectural firm's Instagram posts. Potential clients quietly withdraw from projects, not wanting association with the dad who sued for custody. His business partner suggests releasing a statement. Lucian refuses, unwilling to turn his son into a PR campaign. Both parents discover the cost of public judgment, how strangers feel entitled to opinions about private pain, how the court of public opinion runs parallel to the legal one, with even less mercy and no rules of evidence. If this story has you leaning forward, if you're feeling the weight of 2 good parents trapped in a system that demands they compete, tap that like button right now and tell me in the comments, what's one thing courts can't measure but matters most in raising a child? Is it the way a parent knows which story will calm a nightmare? The specific way they tie shoelaces or cut sandwiches? The particular laugh they share over inside jokes? Maybe it's something else entirely. The feeling of being known, being safe, being loved in ways that don't fit on evaluation forms. Drop your answer below because these responses matter. They remind us that children aren't puzzles with correct solutions, but human beings who thrive on connection, consistency, creativity, and countless unmeasurable moments that never make it into legal testimony. The comments are filled with beautiful, heartbreaking observations. My mom always knew when I needed quiet versus when I needed distraction. Dad couldn't cook worth a damn, but he never missed a recital. Courts measure square footage when what mattered was whether someone noticed I was sad. Thousands of responses, each one a small rebellion against the idea that love can be judged by lawyers. Day 3 arrives heavy with anticipation. Both legal teams have presented their cases, called their witnesses, and submitted their exhibits. The evidence sits in neat folders, love reduced to paper and precedent. Judge Winters asks routine procedural questions, confirms both sides, have rested, prepares to announce when she'll issue her ruling. But then she does something unexpected, something her 23 years on the bench have taught her matters more than any legal argument. She looks directly at Ilara and Lucian, her voice gentle but firm, and asks the only question. That actually matters. What would this look like if you trusted each other? The courtroom goes silent. The question hangs in the air like a challenge, like an invitation, like a lifeline, thrown to two drowning people who forgot they both know how to swim. Margaret Torres and David Reeves exchange glances, uncertain whether to object to a question that doesn't fit standard custody proceedings. Patricia Santos leans forward, recognizing wisdom when she hears it, and Ilara and Lucian, for the first time since the lawsuit began, look directly at each other across the courtroom aisle, really look, seeing not the opponent. Their lawyers constructed, but the person who once steadied a ladder, who painted roofs at dawn, who held their newborn son and promised to always put him first. The judge's question, what would this look like if you trusted each other, creates a rupture in the proceedings, a moment where legal theatre pauses long enough for human truth to surface. Margaret Torres recovers first, approaching the bench with careful diplomacy. Your Honor, if I may, my client would like to address the court directly. Judge Winters nods, adjusting her glasses with the expression of someone who's been waiting for exactly this shift. Ilara stands, smoothing her dress with hands that still bear traces of cerulean, paint under the nails despite her best efforts to present professionally. She walks to the witness stand, though she's not being examined, sits in the chair that's held dozens of parents trying to explain love in legal language. The court reporter's fingers hover over the keys, ready to translate emotion into transcript. I've been thinking about that question since you asked it, Ilara begins, her voice steadier than she expected. What would this look like if we trusted each other? And I realized I've been so focused on defending my choices that I stopped explaining what actually happens in my home. She takes a breath, finding the words she should have led with months ago. Home isn't a place with the right square footage or the proper safety certifications, Ilara continues, speaking. Not to the judge, but to the courtroom, to Lucian, to anyone who's tried to measure love with rulers and regulations. Home is a verb. It's what we do, not what we have. She describes the 3-note ritual that's happened every night for 6 years, whether Orion sleeps at her apartment or not. When he's with her, she sings 3 notes outside his door, E, G, C, and waits for him to sing them back before entering. When he's at Lucian's, she texts 3 musical note emojis at 8:47 p.m., the exact time he was born, and he responds with the same 3 notes. It started when he was 4 and afraid of monsters, she explains. I told him the notes were a secret language that said, I'm here, you're safe, we're connected. Over the years, those 3 notes became shorthand for everything we can't always say out loud. When he's anxious about a test, 3 notes. When I'm worried about him, 3 notes. When either of us just needs to know the other is thinking of us, 3 notes. She pulls out her phone, shows the judge months of text threads, 3 emojis sent at 8:47 p.m. every single night, even during their worst custody fights, even when lawyers advised minimal contact. That's what home means to us. Not the building, but the ritual. Not the location, but the connection. Ilara continues. The floodgates open now, months of legal restraint giving way to the kind of truth that doesn't fit in affidavits. When people ask about my parenting style, they use words like chaotic or unstructured, and I understand why it looks that way on paper. But there's structure in flexibility, consistency in adaptation. Orion knows that at my place, he can wake me at 2 a.m. if he has an idea for a story or a question about the universe. He knows we'll pause dinner if the sunset looks particularly beautiful because some moments matter more than meal schedules. He knows that if he's struggling with homework, we'll turn it into a game or a painting or a song until the concept clicks. She describes the way they learn together, fractions taught through pizza slices, history understood through costume construction, science explored through kitchen experiments that sometimes fail spectacularly and teach more in failure than success ever could. I'm not rejecting structure, she clarifies, looking directly at Lucian for the first time. I'm expanding it. I'm teaching him that plans can change, that adaptability is a survival skill, that life doesn't always follow blueprints, but that's not always a disaster. The courtroom listens with a particular attention reserved for moments when performance drops away and reality surfaces. Margaret Torres doesn't interrupt, recognizing that her client is doing more for her case than any legal argument could. The upstate situation, Ilara addresses it head-on. I didn't handle it perfectly. I should have talked to Lucian more before making plans, should have honored the partnership we promised when we separated. But my mother fell, and in that moment, I had to choose between the custody schedule and being the daughter my mom needed. Between following the agreement and modeling for Orion what family loyalty looks like. I chose my mother, and I'd make that choice again. But I understand now that the way I communicated, it made Lucian feel erased, made him feel like his equal parenting rights were being dismissed. She pauses, voice catching slightly. That was never my intention. I don't want to erase him from Orion's life. I want our son to have both of us, fully, differently, completely. I want him to learn structure from his father and flexibility from me. I want him to see that people can love each other even after divorce and can disagree about methods while agreeing about goals. Judge Winters makes a note, then looks to the defense table. Mr. Graves, would you like to respond? Lucian stands, exchanges a glance with David Reeves, who gives a slight nod of permission. He approaches the witness stand as Ilara steps down, their paths crossing in the narrow aisle. For a second, they're close enough to touch, and something passes between them, not reconciliation, but recognition, a glimpse of the people they were, before lawyers turned love into litigation. Lucian sits where Ilara just sat, the chair still warm, and takes a moment to organize. His thoughts with the same precision he brings to architectural drawings. I want to address what Ilara said about home being a verb, he begins, his voice carrying the measured tone that some mistake for coldness, but is actually control over deep feeling. I agree with that definition more than she might think, but I'd add that continuity is a kindness. He lets that statement settle before explaining what he means. Orion is 10 years old, Lucian continues, hands folded on the witness stand rail, every gesture deliberate. He's navigating social dynamics that can be cruel, academic demands that increase annually, and the reality of having 2 homes instead of 1. In that context, continuity isn't a restriction, it's relief. It's known that Monday means chess club, that Thursday dinner is always at 6:30 so he can finish homework before game night. That bedtime happens at 9 p.m. because sleep science shows 4th graders need 10 hours for optimal cognitive development. He describes his parenting approach not defensively but with the clarity of someone who's studied the research, consulted the experts, designed his fatherhood with the same attention he brings to buildings that need to stand for decades. When Orion comes to my apartment, he knows where everything is. His favorite cereal stays stocked. His homework folder sits in the same spot. His clothes are organized by type so getting ready for school doesn't require treasure hunts or morning stress. That's not control. That's creating a foundation stable enough that he can be creative, spontaneous, even chaotic within it. Lucian pulls out his own phone, scrolls to a photo, and shows the judge. It's Orion's room at his apartment. Navy walls with glow-in-the-dark stars, a desk, organized but not sterile, shelves holding books arranged by size and subject. But what catches attention is the wall beside the bed, covered in paintings, and drawings, unmistakably Ilara's style mixed with Orion's developing hand. People assume that because I value order, I reject creativity. That's not true. I reject chaos that masquerade as freedom. There's a difference. He describes their routine. Homework completed first, no exceptions. But, once finished, the evening opens for building elaborate Lego cities, conducting kitchen experiments with baking soda volcanoes, staying up late during meteor showers to watch shooting stars from the fire escape. The structure exists so the freedom has shape. Continuity provides the safety net that lets him take risks. He knows that no matter what happens during the day, at 9 p.m., we read together. Sometimes books I choose about science or history, sometimes graphic novels that I'd never select, but always together, always consistent. He addresses the upstate conflict directly, the architect in him needing to examine the foundation that cracked. When Ilara wanted to take Orion to her mother's farm, my immediate response was procedural. We have an agreement. Changing it requires mutual consent. 3 months is too long. I stand by the concern but not the delivery. What I should have said is, I'm scared. That if I'm too flexible, I'll become the weekend parent, the fun-time dad. The one who loses influence over the daily decisions that shape our son. I'm scared that Ilara's spontaneity will always trump my planning because emotions read as more authentic than logistics. His voice holds the particular strain of someone admitting vulnerability in a room full of strangers taking notes. But fear isn't policy, and I let my anxiety dictate my response. I could have proposed compromises, weekends upstate, extended summer months, virtual schooling that maintains continuity while allowing family support. Instead, I defaulted to no because no felt safer than negotiation. The judge intervenes with a question that cuts to practical reality. Mr. Graves, your work requires travel, correct? How do you manage custody responsibilities during business trips? It's a fair probe, one his lawyer prepared him for, but Lucian answers without the rehearsed response. I travel approximately 8 days per month for site visits, client meetings, and project oversight. During those times, Orion stays with Ilara outside our scheduled custody arrangement, which she's always accommodated without complaint or request for compensation. In retrospect, I relied on her flexibility while refusing to extend the same courtesy. That was hypocritical. He looks directly at Ilara. You've rearranged your teaching schedule, cancelled gallery showings, put your work second to cover my professional obligations. I took that for granted, instead of recognizing it as the partnership we promised to maintain. Judge Winters writes something, underlines it, a gesture both lawyers notice with professional wariness. Lucian continues, building to a conclusion he's been circling. If the court asks what this looks like with trust, I'll answer honestly, it looks like me cutting my travel schedule in half. It looks like real conversations about Ilara's mother instead of immediate rejection. It looks like acknowledging that my need for control and her need for freedom both come from the same place. We each parent from our wounds. I had chaos growing up, so I built a structure for Orion. Ilara had rigidity, so she created space for him to breathe. Neither of us is wrong. We're just solving for different traumas. The courtroom absorbs this admission, the kind of psychological honesty that rarely surfaces in custody proceedings where vulnerability feels like liability. I don't want to win this case, Lucian says finally. I want to raise our son with his mother, even if we can't be married, even if we disagree about methods, even if it requires more flexibility than comes naturally to me. Orion doesn't need a victor. He needs both his parents showing up, not as opponents but as collaborators who remember they're on the same team. The silence that follows feels weighted with possibility. Judge Winters allows it to extend, lets the truth settle like snow. Then she moves to closing arguments, giving each attorney the floor for final presentations that will sound polished and feel messy because no amount of legal language can capture what just happened. Margaret Torres emphasizes Ilara's devotion, her creative parenting, her willingness to sacrifice for family. David Reeves highlights Lucian's stability, his preparation, his commitment to continuity. Both lawyers are skilled, both make compelling cases, both know that the decision ultimately rests with a judge who must translate human complexity into legal conclusions. The closing arguments follow predictable patterns, citations of precedent, references to best interest standards, strategic emphasis on facts that favor their respective clients. But everyone in the courtroom knows the real closing arguments already happened when two parents stopped performing for lawyers and started speaking to each other. The question emerges in comment sections and group chats before the day's testimony even concludes. Which truth hit harder? Ilara's home is a verb, or Lucian's continuity is a kindness. The responses divide not by gender or parenting style, but by personal history. People who grew up in chaos gravitate toward Lucian's position, describing how consistency saved them, how knowing what to expect created safety in unstable environments. Those who survived rigidity lean toward Ilara, explaining how spontaneity taught resilience, how flexibility became freedom. But the most thoughtful responses refuse the binary, recognizing that children need both: the security of knowing what comes next and the adventure of embracing what might. My dad was the schedule, my mom was the surprise, and I needed both, someone writes, receiving thousands of affirming replies. The debate becomes less about choosing sides and more about acknowledging complexity, about admitting that good parenting comes in different packages and children thrive on variety, not uniformity. Judge Winters announces she'll issue her ruling the following morning, giving herself overnight to review testimony, consult precedent, and make a decision that will satisfy no one, because Solomon's choice never does. She'll try to split the baby without killing it, create a custody arrangement that honors both parents. While serving the child, navigate between competing goods instead of clear rights and wrongs. The verdict, whatever it is, will force a choice, not between parents but about how power gets distributed, where the child primarily resides, whose approach gets judicial endorsement. Someone will receive primary custody. Someone will get visitation. The law requires binary decisions even when life operates in spectrums, and Orion, still unaware of the exact details being debated, will inherit whatever the adults decide, carrying forward both the structure his father provides and the spontaneity his mother champions, becoming a bridge between worlds, whether he wants that responsibility or not. The courtroom empties slowly, lawyers packing briefcases while Ilara and Lucian exit, through separate doors to avoid the media circus waiting on the courthouse steps. Neither parent sleeps well that night. Both sit with the judge's question, "What would this look like if you trusted each other?" And both begin to wonder if there's a third option nobody's mentioned yet, a possibility that exists outside the win-lose framework the legal system requires. But that possibility, if it exists at all, will have to wait until after the verdict, after the cameras, after the moment when their son does something no custody agreement prepared them for, speaks his own truth loud enough that everyone has to listen. Judge Helen Winters returns to the bench at exactly 9 a.m., her black robe settling around her shoulders like authority-made fabric. The courtroom fills with the same cast as yesterday, lawyers with briefcases, reporters with recording devices, both families wearing expressions that range from hopeful to terrified. Ilara sits straighter than usual, hands clasped so tightly her knuckles bleach white. Lucian maintains his characteristic stillness, but his right foot taps an irregular rhythm against the floor, betraying nerves his face won't show. The bailiff calls for order, though nobody's speaking. The silence itself demands respect. Judge Winters opens the file that holds her decision, pages thick with consideration and case, law, with precedent and psychology, with the impossible task of measuring immeasurable things. "I've presided over family court for 23 years, she begins, her voice carrying the particular weariness of someone who's divided too many children between loving parents. This case is among the most difficult because both parties are fundamentally good parents who love their child deeply. There is no villain here, no neglect, no abuse. only two different approaches to the same goal. She pauses, allowing that acknowledgement to settle before delivering the verdict nobody truly wants. After reviewing all testimony, evidence, and the Guardian ad litem's comprehensive report, this court awards primary physical custody to Lucian Graves. The words land like stones in still water, ripples spreading outward. Ilara's breath catches audibly. Her sister reaches for her hand. Margaret Torres closes her eyes briefly, the expression of an attorney who fought well but lost anyway. Judge Winters continues, her tone gentler but no less authoritative. Ms. Cross will have residential custody every other weekend, alternating holidays, and 6 weeks during summer months. Additionally, she will have Wednesday overnight visits and the option for virtual contact daily. The technical language tries to soften the reality. Orion will live primarily with his father. Visit his mother on a schedule determined by court order rather than family need. The reasons follow: school proximity, demonstrated stability, financial security, the ability to maintain consistent routine without work travel conflicts now that Mr. Graves has committed to reducing his professional obligations. Each justification sounds reasonable, defensible, grounded in legal standards designed to protect children's best interests. Each one feels like a small death to the mother who just lost daily access to her son. The ruling addresses both parents directly, Judge Winters trying to build bridges even while drawing boundaries. Mr. Graves, your commitment to structure and stability provides important foundations. However, this court expects you to honor the flexibility you promised yesterday to accommodate Ms. Cross during family emergencies, to recognize that schedules serve families rather than families serving schedules. She turns to Ilara. Ms. Cross, your creative parenting and emotional attunement are valuable gifts. However, consistency matters for children navigating complex family situations. The visitation schedule is generous but firm. Adherence is required, unless both parties agree to modifications in writing. The gavel falls, making it official, transforming human relationships into enforceable orders. The room exhales collectively, the tension breaking into movement. Reporters scramble for phones to file updates. Family members embrace or comfort, depending on which side they're supporting. Lucian's face shows relief mixed with something heavier, not quite guilt but close. The knowledge that winning in court means someone you once loved lost something precious. The courthouse steps scene unfolds exactly as described in the opening. Hook, but experiencing it chronologically carries different weight. The media presence has grown since yesterday. More cameras, more microphones. National networks joining local reporters in the feeding frenzy. Someone leaked that the verdict would be announced today, transforming the steps into a stage for public reaction. Ilara exits first, flanked by her sister and Margaret Torres, her face composed despite the devastation visible in her eyes. She's prepared a statement, something professional about respecting the court's decision and focusing on Orion's well-being. But she doesn't get to deliver it because Lucian emerges through the same doors, and the press erupts with shouted questions. Mr. Graves, how does it feel to win? Ms. Cross, will you appeal? What message does this send about mothers' rights? Is this about money or parenting? The questions overlap into noise, each reporter competing for the soundbite that will lead tonight's broadcast. And then Orion appears, walking between his parents who've been careful not to touch him or each other, maintaining the neutral distance their lawyers recommended. Nobody expected Orion to approach the microphones. The press conference protocol called for parent statements, maybe a brief family photo, then dispersal to avoid excessive media exposure. But Orion moves forward with the calm determination of someone who's been silent too long, who's watched adults debate his welfare without asking what he actually needs. He steps to the podium that comes up to his chest, doesn't use the step stool someone placed there, and speaks directly into the forest of recording devices. Please stop asking who won, he says, and the world leans in to listen. The viral moment happens in real time, phones held high capturing every word. Live streams broadcasting to audiences refreshing feeds for updates. I'm not a prize, I'm a person, and I need both my homes. The sentence is simple, devastating, perfectly capturing what months of legal arguments missed. He continues, voice steady despite the pressure. My dad teaches me that plans matter, and my mom shows me that love is flexible. I need both those things. Splitting me down the middle with a schedule doesn't solve anything, it just makes everyone sad. He looks back at his parents, both frozen in shock. Can you please just talk to each other? Not with lawyers, but like you used to, like you're on the same team? The silence lasts 3 heartbeats before chaos erupts. Reporters shout follow-up questions, but Orion has already turned away, walking back to his parents who stand, processing what their 10-year-old just taught them about wisdom and custody, and the price of winning. Within minutes, the clip appears on every social media platform. Within the hour, I'm not a trophy trends globally, joined by both homes and a listen to the kids. The video gets shared by parenting advocates, family law reformers, celebrities with their own custody battles, divorced parents who recognize their own failures in Orion's words. News outlets create special segments. Morning shows book child psychologists to discuss the viral moment. Think pieces multiply like organisms in culture dishes, each writer finding different meanings in the same simple truth. Children aren't possessions to be divided, but people deserving voices in decisions about their lives. The comment sections fill with stories. Adults describing their own childhood custody arrangements, the trauma of being split. Between homes, the pain of watching parents fight over them like territory instead of collaborating for their welfare. The backlash arrives alongside the praise because the internet never offers unanimous anything. Some critics argue that Orion's statement proves Ilara coached him, weaponized him, used their son to undermine the court's legitimate ruling. Others claim Lucien's rigid control created a child so desperate for flexibility he'd embarrass his father publicly. Legal analysts debate whether a 10-year-old's preference should influence custody decisions, or whether children lack the perspective to judge what serves their long-term interests. Family therapists appear on cable news arguing both sides, some insisting children's voices matter, others warning against burdening kids with adult decisions. The debate rages across platforms, everyone projecting their own experiences onto a family they've never met. A boy they know only through 17 different camera angles capturing the same 30-second moment. But something shifts in the noise. Donations spike to family court reform organizations. Legislators in 3 states announce bills requiring courts to consider children's preferences at younger ages. Law schools add the Graves Cross case to family law curricula as an example of how legal frameworks sometimes fail the families they're designed to protect. Therapists report increased appointments from divorced parents seeking better co-parenting strategies. The viral moment became a movement, not because it solved anything, but because it named something. Many people felt but couldn't articulate that custody battles measure the wrong things, that winning and losing are inadequate frameworks for family relationships, that children need permission to love both parents without choosing between them. That evening, Ilara sits in her apartment surrounded by her sister's awkward comfort and untouched sympathy casseroles. Her phone buzzes constantly with messages she can't bring herself to read. Congratulations to Lucian, condolences to her, legal analysis, media requests, friends choosing sides. She opens a blank text to Lucian, types and deletes 3 different messages before settling on 4 words. Can we make this kinder? She hits send before second-guessing, then immediately regrets it, imagines his lawyer, advising against unsupervised communication, prepares for the message to go unanswered. Her phone buzzes 90 seconds later. Yes, tonight. She stares at the response, reading meanings between the letters, wondering if this is hope or just exhaustion speaking. She types, "The diner?" His reply arrives immediately, 20 minutes. She grabs her jacket, tells her sister she needs air, and walks the 6 blocks to the place where they decided to separate 2 years ago, where they ordered pancakes at 9 p.m. and coffee they didn't drink, where they ended one version of their relationship without knowing if a different version might exist. What lesson is life teaching here? That's the question flooding comment sections as the story develops beyond the viral moment. What can Orion, and we, learn from watching two good people hurt each other while loving the same child? Drop your takeaway in the comments, the one lesson you'd want Orion to carry forward from this impossibly difficult chapter. And if you're invested in seeing how they rebuild, if you believe families can evolve past their breaking points, subscribe to Mr. Steele Rich Stories. Because the most important part of this story isn't the custody ruling or the viral video. It's what happens next when the cameras stop rolling and two parents have to figure out how to translate courtroom requirements into daily life, how to honor legal boundaries while maintaining emotional connection, and how to co-parent after a judge chose sides. The responses arrive in thousands, that love doesn't always look like staying together, that speaking your truth matters even when it's scary, that adults don't always have the answers, that asking for what you need isn't selfish, it's survival. Each comment is a small piece of collective wisdom, proof that Orion's story belongs to more than just his family. The diner sits half empty when Elara arrives, the same cracked vinyl booths and tired waitress working the evening shift. Dolores recognizes her immediately, waves her toward the corner booth, the one where everything changed last time. Lucien arrives 3 minutes later, still wearing his courtroom suit, but with the tie loosened, the armor partially removed. They sit across from each other, no lawyers between them, no court reporters, capturing every word, just 2 coffees that Dolores brings without, asking, and a shared history that includes paint on ladders, rooftop dawns. A son who deserves better than what the legal system just delivered. Neither speaks immediately, both remembering the last time they sat here, the promises they made about putting Orion first, the good intentions that somehow led to courthouse steps and viral videos. Finally, Lucien breaks the silence. I didn't want to win. Not like that. Elara nods, stirring sugar into coffee she won't drink. I know. I'm sorry it got this far. And there, in that ordinary diner, with its ordinary coffee, they begin the conversation that should have happened. Months ago, no scripts, no strategies, just 2 people who created a life together, figuring out how to raise him apart without turning love into litigation. The diner conversation lasts 3 hours, stretching past Dolores's shift change into the late evening cruise rotation. Elara and Lucien don't solve everything. Years of accumulated resentment don't dissolve over coffee and vulnerability, but they make a start. The apologies come specific rather than general, acknowledging actual harm instead of offering blanket regrets. I'm sorry I treated the upstate plan like a threat instead of a legitimate family need, Lucien says, hands wrapped around his cup, like it might anchor him. I defaulted to legal language when I should have led with concern. I made you feel like the enemy when you were just trying to help your mother. Elara accepts this, then offers her own accounting. I'm sorry I stopped communicating clearly once the lawyers got involved. I built a narrative where you were the controlling villain instead of remembering your parents from your wounds the same way I parent from mine. I should have honored our partnership even when the marriage ended. The specificity matters, not generic sorry for everything but named moments where they chose self-protection over collaboration, legal strategy over human connection. They inventory the damage honestly, the text messages sent through attorneys, instead of directly, the birthday party invitations issued, separately forcing their son to choose, the subtle ways they each try to be the preferred parent instead of the necessary team. The PR statement drops 2 days later, confusing every publicist in the city and delighting parents everywhere navigating similar battles. Posted simultaneously to both Elara's and Lucien's social media accounts. The joint message reads, "We went to court because we forgot how to talk to each other. We won't make that mistake again. Custody rulings can't measure what matters most, that our son needs both his. Parents working together, not competing. We're choosing collaboration over appeals, conversation over litigation, and kindness over being right. This isn't a reconciliation, it's a recalibration. Watch what happens when divorced parents remember they're on the same team." The statement includes no blame, no justification for the lawsuit, no defense of positions argued in court. Just acknowledge that the legal system can't fix what communication broke, that judges can. It parent better than parents willing to do the uncomfortable work of trusting each other. The response divides predictably. Some praise the maturity, others criticize the privilege of choosing mediation after already securing a favorable ruling. Legal analysts debate whether this undermines judicial authority, but the parents in the comments, the ones fighting their own custody wars, respond with relief and recognition. "This is what we needed to hear," someone writes. That it's possible to choose differently. Within 48 hours, the post got shared 200,000 times. Not because it went viral, but because it went deep, reaching people exhausted by conflict who desperately want permission to try another way. Mediation begins the following week in a small office that smells of lavender and furniture polish, facilitated by Dr. Rita Okonkwo, a family therapist specializing in high-conflict co-parenting. Unlike the courtroom with its formal procedures and legal posturing, this space holds comfortable chairs arranged in a circle, tissues within reach, and ground rules posted on the wall. Listen without interrupting. Assume positive intent. Focus on solutions, not blame. The first session feels awkward, both Elara and Lucian hyper-aware that they're choosing this. Conversation. Instead of filing appeals, that vulnerability here requires more courage than courtroom performance. Dr. Okonkwo introduces a concept she calls the benefit of the doubt ritual. Before reacting to the other parent's decision, pause and ask what positive intention might drive it. When Lucian questions why Elara changed Orion's bedtime during her custody weekend, instead of cataloguing it as evidence of inconsistency, he asks, "What were you responding to?" She explains that Orion seemed exhausted, that she chose rest over routine, that sometimes bodies need different things than schedules predict. The reframing shifts everything, from accusation to understanding, from power struggle to problem to solving. They practice this in session until it becomes a habit. Assume the other parent loves Orion and acts from that love, even when the method differs from what you'd choose. The small kindnesses accumulate gradually, unglamorous acts that build trust more effectively than grand gestures. Elara notices Orion's favorite socks, the ones with tiny suns, are wearing thin, buys him 3 new pairs, and sends 2 pairs to Lucian's apartment so he has them at both homes. Lucian observes that Orion's homework notebook system isn't transferring well between houses and creates a digital version both parents can access, color, coded, but flexible enough for Elara's teaching style. When early snow arrives in November, Lucian texts Elara, "Your car still has those bald tires." She admits she hasn't had time to replace them. He responds, "Appointment at my mechanic tomorrow at 3. Already paid. Non-negotiable. Winter's coming, and Orion rides in that car." She shows up, half expecting judgment about her maintenance habits, but finds only the mechanic and a note, "Snow tires installed. Drive safe. L." The following week, Elara's mother has a follow-up appointment 2 hours upstate during a blizzard. Elara debates cancelling, worried about the drive. Lucian texts, "I'll take you. My car handles better in snow, and your mom shouldn't miss the appointment." They drive in comfortable silence, Lucian at the wheel navigating icy roads, while Elara watches bare trees blur past the window, both recognizing this for what it is, not romance but something equally valuable, the friendship they forgot they built before they fell in love. The real show to UPS matter more than the viral moments. Lucian starts attending Orion's school recitals even during Elara's custody weeks, sitting in the back row so his presence is supported without intruding. Elara arrives early to Orion's soccer games on Lucian's Saturdays, helps set up chairs and equipment, and stays to cheer alongside Lucian without making it about their relationship status. They develop a daily ritual that transcends the custody schedule. Every evening at 7 p.m., whichever parent doesn't have Orion calls him for a 10-minute check-in. The questions stay consistent. What's one good thing that happened today? What's one thing you're worried about? What's one thing you're looking forward to? The calls create continuity across both homes, ensuring Orion never goes more than a day without both parents' voices both parents' attention, both parents' investment in his daily life. Some nights the conversations run long, stretching past 10 minutes into real discussions about friendship drama, or science projects, or existential questions about why people get divorced. Other nights, Orion's answers are monosyllabic, the 10-year-old equivalent of fine, and that is okay too, because the ritual exists not for information extraction but for connection maintenance. Summer arrives with the kind of heat that makes the city feel like an oven, trash smells amplified and tempers shortened by humidity. Ilara's mother extends an invitation: bring Orion upstate for 2 weeks, plenty of space if Lucian wants to visit on weekends, help needed harvesting strawberries before they rot on the vine. It's a test neither parent names aloud. Can they handle unstructured time together? Can Lucian release control enough to let plans develop organically? Can Ilara include him without feeling like her family's space is being invaded? They accept cautiously, Lucian booking a room at the bed and breakfast 3 miles down the road to maintain appropriate boundaries. The first weekend feels stilted, everyone performing their best behavior. But strawberry picking doesn't allow for performance. It requires kneeling in dirt, staining hands red, laughing when Orion eats more berries than he collects. They work side by side, filling baskets while Ilara's mother supervises. From her porch chair, her hip healed, but her mobility still limited. The conversations happen naturally between rows, Lucian mentioning a new project, Ilara describing a mural commission, Orion updating them both on his friend group dynamics, without having to translate between 2 separate parent languages. The almost kiss happens on the 3rd weekend, unexpected, and earned slowly through weeks of choosing kindness over being right. They're washing strawberries at the outdoor sink, Orion visible through the kitchen window helping his grandmother make pie crust. The evening sun hits Ilara's hair the way it did on the hardware store ladder 12 years ago, and Lucian finds himself leaning closer, remembering what it felt like before they complicated everything with marriage and disappointment. She turns, notices his proximity, and doesn't step back. For a moment, they exist in possibility, not the people who hurt each other, but the ones who once painted. Roofs at dawn, who steadied each other, who created something beautiful before they broke it. The moment stretches, both of them aware that kissing would change the careful reconstruction they've been building, would add romance to the foundation that needs friendship first. Ilara pulls back gently, not rejection, but timing. Not yet, she says softly. Maybe not ever. But if we get there, I want it to be because we've earned it, not because nostalgia made us forget why we couldn't make it work. Lucian nods, respecting the boundary, recognizing wisdom in the restraint. They return to washing strawberries, the moment past but not lost, proof that some things can be rebuilt differently rather than replicated identically. The question appears in the comments as their story continues unfolding. Across social media through occasional updates, name one unglamorous act that keeps a family together, the thing nobody posts about, the invisible labor that doesn't photograph well but matters desperately. The responses flood in, thousands of small truths, apologizing even when you're not 100% wrong, changing plans without resentment when someone gets sick, showing up to boring things because presence matters, not correcting the other parent's wrong way of doing things in front of the kids, saying thank you for things that should be expected, choosing the kind response over the clever comeback, remembering you're on the same team even when it doesn't feel like it. Each answer's a small rebellion against the highlight reel version of parenting, an acknowledgement that families stay intact through accumulated tiny choices to prioritize connection over being right, collaboration over individual victory. The thread becomes a resource. Parents screenshot it for hard days. Therapists share it with clients. Proof that the unsexy work of showing up consistently matters more than grand gestures or viral moments. The changes accumulate gradually enough that pinpointing the shift feels impossible, but by late summer, Ilara and Lucian have established a co-parenting rhythm that looks nothing like the custody schedule Judge Winters mandated. Orion still primarily lives at Lucian's apartment during the school year. That part honors the legal ruling, but the rigid visitation schedule has softened into something more organic, Elara picks him up from school on Wednesdays, even though it's technically Lucian's day because the art supply store is on her route, and Orion needs new sketchbooks. Lucian keeps Orion an extra night when Elara has a gallery opening because supporting her work supports their son's understanding that mothers can be artists and parents simultaneously. They text about small things without lawyer supervision. He left his retainer here again. Thanks. I'll grab it at pickup. His favorite pasta sauce is on sale. Want me to stock both kitchens? Yes. And grab the good Parmesan. The mundane exchanges rebuild trust more effectively than mediation exercises, proving they can communicate about logistics without turning everything into evidence. Next week, they'll walk into court together, not to fight or appeal, but to formally request modification of the custody order they spent 6 months litigating. They'll ask Judge Winters to approve a more flexible arrangement, one that maintains Lucian's address as primary residence for school purposes but allows for fluidity around holidays, summers, and family needs. They'll present a co-parenting plan they created together, negotiated over diner, coffee and strawberry picking, refined through mediation and daily practice. The request is unusual. Most custody modifications come from conflict, not collaboration, from one parent seeking more time at the other's expense. But Elara and Lucian will stand side by side, presenting a unified proposal that prioritizes Orion's need for both parents over either parent's need to win. The court filing includes an unusual addendum, a letter from Orion himself explaining what he needs from both his homes, both his parents, both versions of love that shaped him. Whether Judge Winters approves the modification or maintains the original order, whether the law can accommodate their evolved understanding or demands they fit into standard categories, they've already won something more valuable than custody percentages. They've reclaimed their partnership from the lawyers and rebuilt it on terms that serve their actual family instead of legal abstractions. The Little League season begins in September, with Orion trying out for center field, a position requiring both spatial awareness and the ability to recover quickly from mistakes, skills he's been learning off the diamond for the past year. Lucian and Elara arrive separately to the first game, then choose seats together in the bleachers. A small decision that carries weight for the other parents who've watched their custody drama unfold. The game moves slowly the way youth baseball does, more about participation than precision. Kids learning to trust their instincts and forgive their errors. In the 4th inning, a high fly ball arcs toward Orion's position, the kind of catch that looks easy until you're standing beneath it, watching the ball descend like a judgment. He positions himself, glove raised, eyes tracking the ball's rotation. It hits the leather and bounces out, rolling toward the fence while runners advance. A year ago, Lucian would have tensed at the mistake, mentally cataloging what went wrong, positioning, glove angle, follow through. Elara would have shouted encouragement so loud it embarrassed everyone. But today, they simply watch as Orion retrieves the ball, throws it in, and returns to position wearing the biggest grin. Not shame, not frustration, but the particular joy of a kid learning that mistakes aren't catastrophes, that imperfection carries its own freedom. After the inning ends, Orion jogs past the bleachers and looks up at his parents sitting together. The smile he gives them isn't about the missed catch or the game's outcome, but about seeing them in the same space, cheering for the same team. Rain arrives during the 7th inning, the kind of sudden September downpour that sends parents scrambling for cars and kids celebrating the mud. The game gets called, everyone rushing toward the parking lot in various states of wetness. Lucian opens his architect's umbrella, black, large enough for 2, purchased for functionality rather than aesthetics. He holds it over Elara without asking, and they walk together toward the lot, while Orion splashes through puddles with his teammates, soaked and gleeful. "Remember when rain used to ruin our plans?" Elara asks, rainwater dripping off the umbrella's edge, creating a curtain around them. "You'd have backup activities scheduled, indoor alternatives researched." Lucian smiles, recognizing the gentle teasing for what it is, affection for who they were, appreciation for who they're becoming. "And you'd want to stand in it, paint in it, treat every storm like an adventure instead of an obstacle." They walk a few more steps, shoulders nearly touching. "I don't miss who we were pretending to be," Ilara says quietly. "I miss the parts that were real, the hardware store, the roof painting, believing we could make it work." Lucien shifts the umbrella to his other hand, the one farther from her, creating slightly more space. "We did make it work. Just not the way we planned. Maybe better. Because this version doesn't require us to erase the parts that didn't fit. We get to keep the good stuff without forcing compatibility where it doesn't exist." The star mural happens in October, a collaboration nobody planned but everyone needed. Orion School announces a beautification project, students and families invited to help paint the gymnasium walls, transforming blank concrete into community art. Ilara volunteers immediately, her element, the same gym where she once balanced on a ladder and met a stranger who steadied her. Lucien offers to help with measurements, ensuring the design translates accurately from sketch to wall. They spend 2 Saturdays working side by side, Ilara painting freehand while Lucien marks guidelines, and ensures structural elements like door frames and exit signs get incorporated rather than covered. Orion works between them, filling in stars his mother outlines, following the constellation patterns his father maps. Other families paint nearby, the gym filled with conversation and color, but the graves cross-section draws attention because of the way they work together, not as divorced parents maintaining polite distance, but as collaborators who've learned each other, as languages, who can communicate in half sentences and trust the other understands. When someone asks what they're painting, Orion answers before either parent can. "It's called Now," he says, gesturing to the mural that blends Ilara's flowing creativity with Lucien's precise structure, stars scattered in patterns that are both mathematically accurate and artistically beautiful. Because now is when we're all here together, and that's what matters. The mural gets photographed, posted, shared, not because it went viral, but because it's genuinely beautiful. Proof that different aesthetics can coexist, that structure and spontaneity create something richer than either approach alone. The updated parenting plan gets filed in November, presented to Judge Winters, in a brief hearing that feels nothing like the original custody trial. Both parents attend with their attorneys, but the lawyers speak minimally, letting Ilara and Lucien present the plan they've spent months developing. The document runs 12 pages, detailed but flexible, addressing everything from holiday schedules to communication protocols. What makes it unusual is the language. Instead of mother's time and father's time, the calendar simply notes Orion's time at mom's and Orion's time at dad's, reframing custody from possession to presence. The schedule maintains Lucien's address as primary residence for school continuity, honors the structure that helps Orion thrive, but builds in flexibility for family needs, creative projects, grandmother visits, spontaneous adventures. The plan includes a dispute resolution process that prioritizes direct conversation over legal intervention, mediation over litigation, the benefit of the doubt ritual over assumption of bad faith. Judge Winters reviews the document, asks clarifying questions, then does something rare. She smiles. "In 23 years of family court, I've seen maybe a dozen cases where parents fought this hard to get to court and worked even harder to get back out. This plan honors both your strengths while serving your son's actual needs. Approved." The gavel falls, making their collaboration official, transforming their hard-won understanding into enforceable terms, though everyone in the courtroom recognizes that the real work happens outside legal orders, in daily choices to choose kindness over being right. Fall deepens into the kind of weather that requires jackets and hot chocolate, shorter days and longer shadows. The school holds its annual Fall Festival, a fundraiser involving way too much sugar and questionable supervision. Orion drags both parents through the various stations, ring toss, cakewalk, face painting, treating them as a unit rather than separate attendees. In the crowded hallway between the gym and cafeteria, someone bumps Lucien hard enough that he stumbles slightly. Ilara's hand shoots out automatically to steady him, her fingers wrapping around his forearm the way his hand once steadied a ladder. The touch lasts maybe 3 seconds, practical rather than romantic, but Orion notices. He sees the automatic care, the muscle memory of looking out for each other, proof that divorce ended their marriage but not their fundamental connection. Later, walking to the car, Orion positions himself between them and reaches for both their hands. Neither parent expects it. He's 10, navigating the age where public affection with parents becomes uncool, but he holds on anyway, creating a bridge between their separate lives, forcing them to either hold hands themselves or form an awkward chain with him in the middle. They choose the chain, Orion swinging slightly as they walk, his position as connector both burden and gift, the role he's been playing all along made visible through hand-holding in a school parking lot. Thanksgiving arrives with its complicated logistics and emotional landmines. The custody order specifies alternating years, but the updated plan allows for creativity. They decide to host together at Lucian's apartment since it's larger, Elara arriving early to prep, while Lucian handles the turkey with engineering precision. Orion sets the table, placing 3 plates instead of the usual 2. Centerpiece, made in art class, holding court between the dishes. Both sets of grandparents attend, initial awkwardness giving way to the particular. Relief families feel when adults stop making children choose sides. The meal isn't perfect. Elara's sweet potatoes are too sweet, Lucian's turkey edges toward dry, but the imperfection matters less than the presence. They go around the table sharing gratitude, and when it reaches Orion, he doesn't hesitate. I'm thankful you both learned to talk to each other again, and that I get both my homes. After dinner, while Elara loads the dishwasher and Lucian stores leftovers, their hands occasionally brush, reaching for the same dish, passing containers, navigating the small kitchen that requires coordination. The lamp in the window casts warm light onto the street where other families pass by, some intact, some fractured, all doing their best with complicated love and imperfect people. From outside, someone looking in might see a family, not the nuclear version that gets celebrated on greeting cards, but the evolved kind that required breaking and careful reconstruction, that chose collaboration over competition, that learned. Families aren't verdicts handed down by judges, but verbs practiced daily. The moral settles not as a lesson delivered, but as a truth demonstrated through months of uncomfortable growth. Families aren't fixed states or legal determinations. They're not verdicts declaring winners and losers, not outcomes, but ongoing processes. Families are verbs, things you do rather than things you are, requiring daily practice and repeated choice. You build them through small kindnesses, through showing up to boring events, through apologizing, specifically through assuming positive intent even when hurt tempts you towards suspicion. You maintain them through flexible structure, through honoring different approaches, through recognizing that children need variety more than uniformity, both consistency and adventure, both roots and wings. The Graves Cross family looks nothing like it did when Elara and Lucian married, nothing like the nuclear ideal they once pursued. It looks like 2 apartments with different rules and similar love. It looks like a son who packs a backpack twice weekly and has learned to speak 2 parenting languages fluently. It looks like divorced parents who chose collaboration after the court forced competition, who decided that being kind mattered more than being right, who discovered that the opposite of marriage isn't war but a different kind of partnership, built on respect rather than romance. Share this story with one person who needs a gentler narrative about divorce, about custody, about the possibility that families can evolve instead of just breaking. Drop in the comments the one line you'll remember when CO parenting gets hard, when lawyers send aggressive letters, when you're tempted to fight for your rights instead of your relationship. And subscribe to Mr. Steele Rich Stories for weekly narratives packed with moral weight, for stories that refuse easy villains and recognize that most people are doing their best with limited tools and unlimited love. The comments fill with lines people are claiming. Home is a verb. Continuity is a kindness. Families aren't verdicts, they're verbs. Choose kind over right. I need both my homes. Each selection has a personal resonance, proof that different truths are learned differently, that the same story teaches varied lessons depending on what the listener needs to hear. But the story doesn't end here. It doesn't wrap neatly with lessons learned and growth achieved. Because families, being verbs, continue in motion. Next week, while cleaning out his closet at Lucian's apartment, Orion will find an old phone his father thought he'd recycled. Curious, he'll charge it, scroll through ancient messages and photos from before the divorce, before the courthouse steps, before everything got complicated. And he'll find a voicemail, his father's, voice younger, lighter, talking to his mother about the day Orion was born, promises made in the hospital, room about the family they'd build, the love they'd maintain, the partnership they'd protect. Orion will play that voicemail at dinner with both parents present, and what happens next will change all three lives in ways that prove some stories don't end but transform, that healing is possible, that families can be verbs practiced with intention and grace. But that revelation, that next chapter, waits for another time, another story, another chance to prove that gentle. Narratives about complicated people doing hard things matter more than viral moments and courtroom victories.